Joining us now, Representative Mark Pocan, Democrat from Washington. He serves the 2nd District, a member of the Appropriations Committee, also a member of the Defense Spending Reduction Caucus. He's the co-chair. Representative Pocan, good morning.
Good morning. Just for clarification, Democrat from Wisconsin.
Oh, I apologize for that. My apologies.
No worries.
But as an appropriator, what was it like? We had an earlier guest talking about a number of appropriators voting against Jim Jordan. You serve on that committee. Were you surprised by that?
You know, we've been kind of the last bastion of sanity in this town on appropriations. Even during the Trump administration, we got our work done. We kind of kept our heads down. We usually don't run to the camera like I am today. And unfortunately, this session, Kevin McCarthy ruined that. He put a bunch of the most extreme people in Congress on the committee. We've not done anything that we normally do in the appropriations process, and it's terribly broken. And I think a lot of people who respect this institution more than perhaps their party were kind of speaking out, rightfully so, that we've got to do something different, and maybe putting one of the lead extremists in Washington in charge of the House of Representatives isn't the best idea.
When it comes to that something different, what could Democrats go along with if it wasn't Jim Jordan?
We've been saying for, if not weeks, maybe even months, that we know that they may have to have some bipartisan coalition, and we're willing to do that and talk about that because they can't seem to govern with the majority they have. Having said that, that means you have some power sharing. You have to do some negotiating, something right now they're not terribly good at. But hopefully, if they keep putting people up for speaker that can't get the votes of their own caucus, they'll realize that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Perhaps the new way of approaching that is to reach out to Democrats. We're absolutely willing.
As far as the willingness of Democrats, what about this idea of expanding the current powers of the Speaker pro tem?
Again, through negotiation. I worry about that a little bit for the same reasons, the sanctity of the institution, that if we just suddenly say someone who really only is supposed to have the powers to convene elections suddenly is in charge, there's some potential peril with that as well. So I think we're open to it, but it would certainly have to be part of a negotiation so that we know exactly the parameters and a whole lot more.
Could I get you to elaborate on what you think those perils could be?
Well, then you could have anyone who's not actually elected by the members of Congress in charge in making decisions, and clearly that would be a problem. But also, I don't know if we ever thought a majority couldn't even elect their own speaker. That's a unique problem as well.
Representative, you serve on the Defense Spending Reduction Caucus co-chair. You're also an appropriator. Has any work, the Republicans made comments on this idea of starting an appropriations bill. Has that totally stopped, or is there still work on the background on that?
No, I mean, this year has been a complete mess. They broke the agreement that we had to avoid a shutdown back when we had the debt ceiling negotiations. When that was lifted, a pathwork was to make sure we weren't in the place we are in right now. But 2 weeks later, Kevin McCarthy broke the agreement that he made on the deal. And because of that, what they did is they marked everything to 22 levels, which was against the agreement that the Senate Republicans, Senate Democrats, President, and House Democrats all are still abiding by. So in a way, what we've done has been what I call fantasy Congress. I know sometimes people enjoy fantasy football. I don't enjoy fantasy Congress. I like real Congress, but we're not doing that right now. And because of it, what they've put together is a document that will largely go in the waste bin when they get to actually negotiating with the Senate. And we've really given up the House's prerogative on a lot of things, and that's bad for this institution.
As far as the idea of the funding deadline, what's the general thinking about how that's going to be achieved, or if it's going to be passed with without some type of resolve?
Well, we're going to have an extension of the continuing resolution. For 3 weeks, we've been wading water while the Republicans throw arrows at each other. We need to actually get to the point that we can get to the table with the Senate. Traditionally, that takes 40 or 50 days to do the reconciliation between the bills, and I think we're down to 20-something days to the CR deadline. I think everyone understands we have to, at least everyone who's sane and rational.
The president is in Israel today, Representative Pocan. What message do you think he's sending being there?
Well, I think it's important because President Biden does best when he's talking to people behind the scenes. He doesn't wear his opinions on his sleeve. He doesn't say everything out loud that he's doing, and especially in international negotiations. And I think part of what he's trying to do is get the tensions down. You can't have the attack that happened to Israel by a terrorist group like Hamas. At the same time, you can't have the over-response, the collective punishment that's coming out of Israel back to the citizenry, the Palestinians in Gaza, who are clearly not Hamas, and yet both are happening, and we need to deal with both. So I hope the president's there to say, look, we provide a lot of armament, we provide a lot of support, Israel's an ally, but if you overreach and you hurt public opinion, it's harder for us to help you.
To that end, you and other legislators sent a letter to the president on that very front. What was the what were you calling for in the letter?
One, let's make sure the rules of war are abided by. Yesterday, a hospital was hit. We don't exactly know who did that yet, but whoever did should pay a price. We want to make sure that there are safe corridors for people to be able to leave Gaza and to get humanitarian assistance in. They have to restore food and water and fuel, because right now it's, again, collective punishment to the people in Gaza. And we have to make sure that we're providing substantial humanitarian assistance, both to Israel, but more so to the Palestinians in Gaza, because they just don't have the resources. If we really are going to be a partner that helps bring peace, we've got to, I think, be more objective to help everyone when it comes to humanitarian assistance.
What do you think about the military aspect of what the United States is sending and providing in these days to Israel?
Well, I think there's going to be a big question on the floor. Part of the supplemental that comes to us will probably have funding for Ukraine and for Israel and other things, but it's also supposed to have humanitarian assistance. I yesterday heard the humanitarian assistance may be incredibly pale, and if that's the case, I think there are some of us who are willing to vote against the supplemental if we can't provide money. If our bombs just created what it's created in Gaza in many cases, we have a responsibility to provide humanitarian assistance back. And I think it's really important that the White House and others are hearing that, because there's a lot of damage and a lot of hurt. There's 2.2 million people in Gaza. They're not allowed to leave. I mean, think about it. You've heard of the shooting a fish in a barrel line before. That's essentially what's happening right now. And if we don't provide adequate assistance, we're not living up to what the United States is about when it comes to helping people across the globe.
When it comes to levels, then what does adequate assistance look like in your mind and other Democrats?
I think the most recent estimate that I heard from the UN was they probably need somewhere between $3 and $5 billion to rebuild. Not saying that we're responsible for $3 to $5 billion, but that's a big number, and we have to have at least a big response from the United States to be helping as well as assisting Israel. I think together that's the package that has to happen.
Do you think Republicans can be on board with that?
Well, they better learn how to vote. They can't even get us on the floor to vote right now, so I'd be more concerned about where I think some Democrats are right now. I mean, I've been supportive of Israel in this attack. I've signed the resolution that says we're supportive, but I don't do this with blinders. I do this in seeing what I think is overreach right now happening in Gaza, and I see it in a way that we have to support innocent Palestinians in Gaza. They are not Hamas. Hamas is a specific organization, and collectively punishing 2.2 million people for that, I think, is a huge mistake, and we bear some responsibility to help those people.
Representative Mark Pocan, Democrat from Wisconsin, serves the 2nd District.